When you spend 3 weeks planning a dinner and no one shows up, it does something to your soul. My name is Clara Mitchell. I'm 65 years old, a retired high school teacher from small town Ohio. I taught Shakespeare and Steinbeck for 38 years, raised a son on my own, and spent my life showing up for people birthdays, bake sales, hospital nights, graduations. So when I turned 65, I figured they'd show up for me. I baked the lemon cake from scratch, my son's favorite. I polished the china, folded cloth napkins in the shape of little roses just like I used to for parent-teacher nights. 8 place cards, each written in cursive with a fountain pen my husband once gave me for our anniversary. At 6:00 p.m., the roast was ready. The candles flickered steadily. The house smelled like rosemary butter and hope. By 6:30, the butter was melting into the mashed potatoes. Still no one. By 7:00, I'd stopped pretending there was traffic. The silence wasn't just quiet. It was hollow, like the house was holding its breath, afraid to tell me the truth. I already knew they weren't coming. Not Elliot, not Madeline, not the grandkids, not even a text. And yet, that very same night, something else happened. A discovery that cracked everything wide open. Follow my story until the end, and comment on the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. Because this isn't just about a birthday party. It's about the moment I realized I had been erased. It didn't start with the birthday. The erasure began long before the empty chairs and untouched roast. I see that now. There was Tommy's 3rd birthday. I'd bought him a red sweater with a little fire truck on it, wrapped it neatly, tied it with blue ribbon. I showed up to the venue, gift in hand, heart full, only to be told the party had been moved to the next day. Oh no, didn't Elliot mention it? Madeline had smiled, almost apologetic. We thought you were busy. Then came Thanksgiving. I roasted a small turkey for just myself after Madeline texted last minute. We're doing something simple at home this year, just the 4 of us. We'll stop by next weekend. They never did. And that Christmas, I'll never forget the loneliness of that day. A Yule log cake sat untouched on my kitchen counter next to 2 unopened presents marked to Emma and to Tommy. I watched It's a Wonderful Life by myself and kept the tree lights on longer than usual, hoping the glow would soften the silence. Each incident was small enough to excuse, to rationalize, to forgive, but together they formed a pattern, one I didn't want to name. I used to believe love was about grace, about giving people the benefit of the doubt. But now I wonder if that belief kept me blind. Madeline always had a way of sounding sweet when she shut me out. You need rest, Mum. The kids are on a tight schedule. We didn't want to overwhelm you. And I nodded every time, smiled every time, not realizing what I was agreeing to. Until the silence grew louder than the excuses. The photo didn't just surprise me, it gutted me. I had lit the last candle twice, hoping maybe they'd just lost track of time. That maybe something had come up. An emergency. A change of plans. But when I opened Facebook, hope turned to ash. There they were. Smiling under a twilight sky, the ocean stretching endlessly behind them. Elliot, my son, looked tan and relaxed, holding Emma on his hip. Tommy had a sparkler in his hand. Madeline stood at the center like a queen at court, dressed in flowing white, her arms around both kids. The caption read, "Family is everything. Grateful for these precious memories." I stared at the image until it blurred. My screen glowed in a quiet room. The only sound, the soft tick of the dining room clock, and the faint hum of a roast going cold in the oven. A perfectly set table for 8, now just a still life of disappointment. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't bad timing. This was deliberate. They hadn't overlooked me. They had outgrown me. No one had mentioned a trip. No hint of vacation, no heads up. Just this smiling tableau of unity without me. The woman who'd raised the man in that picture. The woman who used to rock that little boy to sleep when he had nightmares, who helped Emma take her first steps. And now I wasn't even a footnote. That moment changed everything. It was the difference between being left behind and being left out. And for the first time in my life, I felt not invisible, but erased. The knock came just after noon, sharp and unexpected, like a stone thrown at still water. I wasn't expecting anyone. The house still carried the quiet weight of my birthday dinner. That wasn't. I peeked through the window and saw a man mid-30s, dark-haired, holding something tight in his hands like he'd rehearsed this moment and still wasn't ready. I cracked the door. "Can I help you?" "Are you Clara Mitchell?" he asked, his voice polite, almost reverent, Elliot's mother. My stomach tightened. "Yes." He took a breath, like it hurt. "My name is Lucas Tran. I think I might be connected to your family, through your grandson." I blinked. "Noah." He nodded, eyes glistening. "I dated Madeline years ago. We lived together. She left me when she was about 2 months pregnant. No note, no warning, just vanished." I stepped back, clutching the doorknob. His voice was steady, but worn, like he'd told this story 100 times, to no one who believed him. "I didn't know where she'd gone until 3 weeks ago when I saw a photo online. Your family. That little boy. Clara. He looks exactly like I did at his age. Same eyes. Same smile. Even the birthmark on his chin. It felt like the floor shifted beneath me. Because he wasn't wrong. I'd seen that photo too. And now that he'd said it, I couldn't unsee the resemblance. "You deserve to know the truth," Lucas said, his voice barely above a whisper. Because I didn't just see my reflection in that boy, I saw my missing years. We sat across from each other in my living room, two strangers connected by the same child. He held a photograph in his hand, dog-eared at the corners. A little boy with almond-shaped eyes, a crooked front tooth, and a stubborn cowlick, maybe 6 years old. "That's me," he said, passing it over. I looked down, and my breath caught. It was Noah. Or it could have been. Same tilt of the head. Same gaze that held more curiosity than fear. I'd braided that child's hair after bath time. I'd kissed that exact forehead when he was feverish. And now I wasn't sure who he truly belonged to. Lucas leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "She left me, Clara. No warning, no goodbye. I came home from work and she was gone, clothes photos, everything. I searched for months, filed reports. Nothing. I swallowed hard, the walls of my home suddenly unfamiliar. I didn't want to believe it was her when I saw the photos," he continued. "But when I looked closer, I knew. And that boy, he deserves the truth. So does your son." Outside, a breeze stirred the wind chimes on my porch. Something delicate and steady had shifted, and I knew life would never be the same. I didn't need the envelope to tell me what I already felt in my bones, but Lucas brought it anyway. A plain manila folder worn at the edges, the kind of thing that didn't look like it could undo a family. But it did. It absolutely could. He placed it gently on my coffee table, next to a stack of unopened birthday cards from church friends and a cold cup of tea I'd forgotten to drink. "This is the DNA report," he said quietly. "I had to know. I had to be sure before coming here." My fingers trembled as I opened it. I didn't need to read far. Just a line at the bottom, bolded and final. Probability of paternity 99.7%. I stared at those numbers, willing them to shift, to rearrange themselves, to somehow undo what had already unraveled. But there they stayed. Clinical cold, undeniable. Lucas was still talking gently now. "I don't want to take him away. I just want to be in his life. But more than that, Clara, I think your son deserves to know what he's been building his life around." I nodded, but it was more a reflex than an agreement, because at that moment, all I could see was Elliot, my boy with the easy heart, the loyal spirit. I saw him rocking Noah to sleep, carrying him on his shoulders at the zoo, teaching him how to ride a bike with that proud, patient smile. And I realized this wasn't just a lie about a child. It was a betrayal of love, of fatherhood, of the trust Elliot had given so freely to the wrong person. The second dinner didn't have candles. There was no roast, no linen napkins folded like flowers, just 3 chairs, a plain table, and the truth. I invited them under the pretense of a make-up meal, an apology for overreacting about the birthday. I kept my voice light casual, like a mother making peace. but inside every part of me was trembling with what I knew had to be done. Lucas arrived first. He sat quietly in the corner, hands clasped, face pale. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence alone rewrote the room. Elliot and Madeline came 10 minutes later, laughing about something in the car. She wore soft pastels, hair swept up like always, her expression carefully arranged into pleasant indifference. Elliot kissed my cheek, handed me a bottle of wine, and took a seat. "Where's the food?" he asked, smiling. "It's not that kind of dinner," I said gently and slid the folder across the table. Madeline's face changed first. Not shock control. A flicker in her eyes. Calculation. Elliot reached for the folder, confused. "What's this?" I met his eyes. "Just read it, sweetheart." He opened it, scanned the top page, then again, slower. Then he stopped breathing. The silence that followed was so heavy I thought it might split the walls. His hand gripped the table. "Is this real?" Lucas nodded once. "I'm Noah's father, Elliot. I'm sorry you had to find out like this." Elliot looked at Madeline, searching her face for something, remorse maybe. But she said nothing, didn't move. And that was the moment everything broke, not with a scream, not with a slap, but with a silence so deep it swallowed us whole. "What else have you lied about?" Elliot's voice cracked the silence like a plate shattering on tile. He wasn't shouting. He didn't need to. His voice was raw, tender, like skin pulled away from a fresh wound. Madeline blinked slowly, like someone waking from a dream she didn't want to leave. "Elliot, please. This isn't the place." He leaned forward, gripping the folder tighter. "No, Madeline. This is exactly the place. This is where my mother watched me raise another man's son, while you sat across from her smiling." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The silence between them was louder than any confession. Lucas shifted, uncomfortable, but didn't speak. He knew this wasn't his moment. This was a storm that had been building for 7 years, and now it was here, and no one could run from it. I watched my son's face crumble. His eyes scanned the dates, the timeline, the DNA results. All the puzzle pieces he didn't know he'd been handed before now, fitting together into something too cruel to be fiction. "You let me name him after my father," Elliot whispered. "You let me hold him, teach him to swim, call me Dad, knowing—" Madeline's lips trembled, but still no apology came. And that, I think, was the final blow. Not the lie, not even the betrayal. It was the emptiness where remorse should have been. Elliot stood up slowly, like every bone in his body had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. He looked at me, not for answers, just for something solid to hold on to. And I did what mothers do. I stood too, and held him. He looked at her like she was a stranger he'd just passed on the street, familiar but unrecognizable. Elliot didn't say another word. He just sat there, shoulders hunched, hands clenched into fists on either side of the DNA report. His wedding ring caught the overhead light, a small glint of silver on a night when everything else felt grey. Madeline sat frozen, not apologetic, not defensive, just calculating, like she was still searching for the right version of the truth that might save her. But nothing came. No confession, no explanation. No, I was scared, or I thought it was best. Only silence. And somehow that silence screamed louder than betrayal ever could. I watched my son, a man who once ran into burning houses as a volunteer firefighter, sit there unable to move. Not from fear, from devastation. He'd been tricked, not just in love, but in trust. The woman he'd built a life with, raised children with, made plans with, had made him the last to know the truth about his own child. He turned the folder over slowly, then back again, as if doing it twice might change the ending. But some stories don't get rewrites. And in that moment, I knew he wasn't just grieving the lie. He was grieving the version of his life he thought was real. Danoy Madeline left the way she came, quietly, without looking back. No slammed door, no last word. Just the sound of her heels fading down the walkway and the hollow echo of 7 years collapsing behind her. Elliot didn't stop her. He didn't have the strength to. He stood in the foyer like a man left behind in a burning house, watching the smoke rise long after the fire's gone. For 3 days, the house stayed silent. No TV, no music, just the soft shuffle of small feet upstairs and the occasional creak of floorboards at night when none of us could sleep. Lucas stayed nearby, but didn't impose. He didn't ask for custody, didn't make demands. He simply said, "I just want to know him. I just want to be a presence he can count on." And somehow that quiet humility carried more weight than any courtroom claim ever could. Noah was too young to understand the complexity of it all, but kids feel what words can't explain. He crawled into my lap that Sunday morning, curled into my side like he used to when he was a toddler. "Grandma?" he asked, voice small. "Yes, baby. Am I still yours?" I wrapped my arms around him like armor. "You were always mine," I whispered. "Doesn't matter who you came from. You're the child my heart chose every day." And in that moment, I knew blood makes a connection. But love makes a family. It's strange how the heart makes room even after it's been broken. 6 months later, the house is no longer quiet. It hums again, soft laughter from upstairs, the clatter of Legos on the floor. Two voices saying Dad from opposite corners of the living room. One calls him Daddy, the other, Daddy Lucas. Noah adjusted faster than we expected. Not because he understood everything, but because he was loved through the changes. Emma, sweet and cautious, took more time, but she started smiling again, started drawing pictures with all of us in them. Elliot, Lucas, me, and even their goldfish Barry. Sunday dinners became sacred. No fancy linen, no birthday illusions. Just spaghetti garlic bread and stories around the table. Elliot still looks tired sometimes, but there's light in his eyes again. Lucas sets the table. Emma folds the napkins. Noah runs into my arms like nothing ever changed. And maybe it didn't, because at the core, love remained. It just had to survive the fire to prove it was real. They call me Grandma, like they always have, but now they say it louder, like they're making sure I hear it. I often think back to that birthday dinner, the one no one came to, and I realize now, maybe it wasn't the end. Maybe it was the clearing before the rebuilding. And you, yes, you, if you've ever been pushed out of your own family, if you've ever felt invisible where you once belonged. What did you do? Leave me a comment with the city you're watching from. I want to know how far this story has travelled, because sometimes healing starts with being heard. The last time I sat at this table, I was surrounded by empty chairs and quiet betrayal. Tonight the chairs are full. Lucas is telling one of his corny dad jokes. Noah laughs before the punchline even lands. Elliot's scraping plates into the sink, humming a tune I haven't heard since he was in college. Emma is curled against my shoulder, sound asleep, her thumb barely resting against her lip. The house smells like cinnamon and garlic, like comfort, and I realize, this is what survival looks like. Not dramatic, not triumphant, just steady, earned, quietly beautiful. I used to think family was something fixed, something sealed in baby books and bloodlines. But now I know better. Family is made around tables like this, where truths are spoken, forgiveness is offered, and chairs are pulled out for those brave enough to stay. For a long time, I let myself be edited out of my own story. I accepted less than I deserved, because I thought love meant never asking to be seen. But love isn't silent. Love protects. Love tells the truth, even when it breaks things. Especially when it breaks things. So if someone has been quietly moving you to the edge of your own life, don't let them. Don't disappear gently. Don't let anyone write your story without the chapter that bears your name. Because I almost did. And had I stayed quiet, I would have missed this. This warmth, this noise, this imperfect, beautiful ending. No, not an ending. A beginning with room at the table, and love that finally has no conditions.